you an entrepreneur who would like to reach more people, make a bigger impact, and make more money? You need to check out Unleash the live event, where we will show you how to move from a one-on-one coaching consulting model into a one-to-many model using the online biz formula. I'm bringing in experts from around the country who are going to show you how you can put together sales funnels that convert, create a program and a product that you can sell over and over again, and we are going to have a ton of fun doing it. Join us in November for Unleash the live event in San Diego, California. Just head on over to unleashedlive.com and sign up today. I am so happy to bring you today Charles Gaudet. Charles is author of the Predictable Profits Playbook, and he's the CEO and founder of Predictable Profits, and he's widely recognized as a leading business coach for entrepreneurs who just aren't willing to settle for mediocre profits. They want to outthink, outmarket, and out-earn their competition. His business advice has been featured on Inc., Fox Business, I should say, Forbes, and many other media channels. And on his website, predictableprofits.com, he's endorsed by a range of clients, reporting that Charlie's been the driving force behind marketing strategies, earning as much as six figures within just 24 hours and anywhere from 30% to over 100% growth in under a year. Hi, Charles.
Hello, Patty.
So good to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on this podcast. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about what you're up to and what you've been doing in this business.
Sure. Well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 4 years old. I grew up in a very strong entrepreneurial family, so it was just kind of natural that I wanted to fill my dad's shoes as quickly as I could. So, being an entrepreneur since four, owning a business every year since, graduated from the nation's #1 college in entrepreneurship, Babson, started a business right from Babson, and I've had a business ever since. I created my first multi-million-dollar business at the age of 24. I've spoken to audiences, both domestic and international. I've helped companies, as you mentioned in the introduction, earn as much as six figures within just 24 hours. And we took that company, who was just a low to mid six-figure company, and we, using a few strategic marketing strategies, made $1.17 million within 5 days.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. That's an incredible result for that client.
Yeah, it's been exciting. We've helped many clients grow their business, and I'm just happy to answer any questions you have as far as how we do it, what's our approach, what makes it different. You name it. I mean, this is your show. I just love talking about what it is that I've learned throughout the years. I've invested over $500,000 just studying some of the smartest, the most brilliant people on the planet, understanding what makes them different from everybody else out there. I mean, there's really some core differences between the small business owner who's stuck and struggling, trying to make six figures a year, versus those people who started their business in the garage, and next thing you know, they're making 7, 8, 9 figures.
Mm-hmm.
There are core differences, but the most fascinating thing in the world is that the difference between the six-figure entrepreneur and the seven-figure plus entrepreneur is really a formula. It's something that they all seem to have that the other people don't have. And, that's taken me where I am today. And that's the reason why I've been able to grow these companies as fast and as quickly as I have, because we just sort of build that into the culture and into the strategy.
So once you have that formula, plug them in and away they go.
Yeah, and it would be crazy to say that I don't want anybody to think that this is something that overnight, boom, it can happen for everybody. It really does involve. I mean, for us to to grow this company by $250,000 within that in that 24-hour period. And I'm just using them as an example because that's the one we've been talking about. But I mean, it takes a lot of work to get up to that point.
Hmm.
And then once you press the button, it's done. And you find ways in which you optimize it just to make it better. And you optimize these things and then you systematize it so that
Hmm.
now, I mean, we took that campaign and we bottled it up and we did it over and over and over again. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. We made
Yes.
this client millions and millions of dollars. And now we're at this point right now where we said, you know what? We've optimized it, we systematized it. Now it's time to innovate. And
Yes.
so we found a number of people copying sort of what we've been doing, and we always want to make sure we're leading the market and blazing the
Hmm.
paths. So we're breaking it down systematically and innovating and starting the process all over again, optimizing, systematizing this new thing, and then we'll go back and we'll innovate, break it again, and so forth. So, um,
And do you see, Charlie, that a lot of the people who are struggling, the reason they struggle is they don't have those systems and they're almost captivated in innovation. They try this, they want to try that. The focus and finding the formula and implementing that and testing and tweaking and fine tuning and relaunching it until you get it right is a common theme.
Well, that's definitely, if I understood you correctly, that's definitely a common theme. There's a lot of reasons that keep entrepreneurs stuck and small at that six-figure level. Especially today, and I think that it's really critical that people understand that the buying environment has changed, and we really started to see things massively take a shift around that 2009, 2010 timeframe. It used to be that corporations had all the power. If let's say I was looking for a marketing consultant, for example, and I would go to a friend of mine, a trusted colleague, and I would say, hey, who do you use for a marketing consultant? Can you give me some advice? And they'd say, no problem. I want you to use this guy, Charlie Gaudet. And so then he would turn around and he would hire me, and because he did it based on that advice. But what we found, even though the internet's been around for a while, starting in that 2009, 2010 timeframe, people became used to using the internet for research and information. And so now, instead of going to your friend and saying, hey, who'd you use for a marketing consultant? They still might do that, but then they come back and they're doing research. They're researching the name, they're researching all the competition, they're researching all their alternatives. So suddenly we're realizing that the balance of power has shifted. Now consumers have all the power. It's really the first time in history where that's happened, where consumers have all of the power. When you go to buy a car, it used to be that you walk into the sales dealership and you expect the salesman to tell you everything they can about the car, and then it's up to you to kind of figure out what you think is a fair price to buy the car at. Now it's different. Now salespeople know that when you walk in the door, you already know what the dealership paid for the car. You already know what a fair price is for the car. You already know all the features and benefits of the car. The salesperson takes a completely different role. And so that is sort of a long-winded answer to what you asked me, but the biggest problem affecting um, small business owners right now is they don't realize consumers have all the power, and they need to really plug in some strategic thinking in order to empower the consumers more, so that you're positioned as that trusted authority, that you're positioned as that leading expert, that you're positioned as that obvious choice. And that's where we need to get these small businesses at. Once they have that done, once they've created that unique advantage,
Hmm.
then they're able to take that company and grow it exponentially.
I love it. That's great wisdom for people listening.
Well,
So let's
thank you.
talk about you for a minute. What inspired you at age 4 to start your first business?
Well, Freud or, any one of the psychologists, psychiatrists would probably have a field day on me. Um, you know, yeah, I can go from a psychological component, which is probably the more truthful, is that my dad had a business, and I could watch the both the trials and the tribulations that he had as a business owner. And there were many times where he would come home and he would say to me, he gave me two pieces of advice that he kept saying over and over again. one piece of advice was, kid, if you ever want to make it for yourself, you got to start your own business. You got to have your own business. If you ever want to make it big, you got to have your own business. And he always said that to me. And then the other piece of advice, and this is often when he had challenges, was, hey, kid, I want you to remember one thing. Employees suck. Now, don't ever be an employee. Now, I will say that, while he did say that, there is really, and I should dig up the statistics for you because it's really fascinating. It's true that the best way to grow a business is the understanding that together you're better, and having a mentality in your business that together you're better. Nobody's ever really working for you, so to speak, but rather everybody's working with you. You become much better when you work as a coherent team. And so therefore, I would disagree with my father with all respect and tell him that employees don't suck. Actually, they're necessary, and you'd never be where you are today if it wasn't for the trusted people on your team. That being said, in order to seek, I was always, as most kids do, they want to seek their father's approval. And when I started my first business, which was selling artwork to my neighbors, that's really where I got a lot of approval from my dad, and I felt more connection and more love. Mm-hmm. And so, when you're a 4-year-old and you get that type of experience, suddenly it just drives you and you want more of it. And so that's why I had a business every year since I was 4. And sometimes I got paid for those businesses. Other times I just started a nonprofit, mm-hmm. and not a formalized nonprofit, but I would just do things just to say it was my business, even if I wasn't getting paid. And I loved it, and I got addicted to that, and that's what got me, I guess got me started in entrepreneurship, and and I think that I've had a lot of failures. I've fallen flat on my face. You could say I've fallen flat on my face and then kicked several times while I was down. Yeah. There've been many times, two specifically, where I was sitting at my desk, looking at a pile of bills, and realizing I've only got, I think it was like $38.25 to my name. And I have no idea how I'm going to pay any of these bills. Mm. And, they're very humbling type of experiences. And, when you get in that situation where you hit that real low and you swear and you promise yourself it's never going to happen again. Yeah. I mean, it drives you to find and seek out people who have the answers so that you can put yourself in a better position to not get there. Yes. And sometimes it still happens, but, you want to stack the odds in your favor. And, so, that's why I did what I did, and invest as much money as I have and travel in the world. And, and I have this information. I just feel like it's it's almost my obligation and my responsibility to my family, to myself, to be able to share what it is that I've learned, mm-hmm. With as many people as I can. And I think that's where I get fulfilled. I mean, you might be able to tell and just talk with me. I mean, your biggest problem, Patty, and I promise you this, is getting me off the line, because I just love it so much. I get this surge of energy anytime I'm given the opportunity to talk about this. Yeah. That So that's my deal.
You're totally in alignment with what you're here to teach people, and there's no shutting that down once you find it, and especially when it comes from your history, your own personal experience.
Well, and of course I'm leaving out a few little bumps in the road, but you're right. I mean, there was one point where, at this point, so when I was 24 years old, I found myself very quickly in over $1 million worth of debt. I'm over $1 million worth of debt, and to top it off, I'm paying double-digit interest rates on that debt. So to say that I was stressed is definitely an understatement. My relationships were breaking down all around me. I was working 24 hours a day, not 24 hours a day, I'm sorry. I was working 7 days a week, every waking hour of every day because I'm trying to bail myself out of that debt.
Mm-hmm.
I had chronic chest pain. Um, I couldn't sleep at night. It was just the insomnia from always worrying about, what's going to happen. And then at one point, I had the shooting pain up the back of my neck and into my brain. I didn't know what was going on. I rushed myself into the emergency room, and the doctor looked at me in the eyes and he said, "This is stress, and the stress is literally starting to kill you."
Oh, wow.
And here I am, 20,
24.
24 years old, being told that I'm under such immense amount of stress that it's starting to kill me. So I went back home at that point and I realized I couldn't work any harder than I'm working now. I mean, I couldn't squeeze an extra minute out of what I was doing. And so if I couldn't work any harder than I was working, there was only one place I could turn, and that was to start working smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And as I really started to think more strategically and outline what I needed to do, what working smart looked like, I was able to not only pay off my debt, but turn my debt around into now um, creating my first $1 million.
Mm.
So, and here I thought that I was just doing everything at that point that everybody else was doing. I mean, I I didn't know that I was doing anything special. I just thought that this is, what I had to do. And I had an accountant I always deal with big accounting firms and big lawyers, legal firms and whatnot. Just, at Babson, one of the things that they teach you is there's two things you never skimp on. You never skimp on accountants and you never skip on attorneys.
Mm.
So I always dealt with these big companies, and the principal of one of the accounting companies came over, went to my house, sat down at my dining room table and said, "Look, we need to talk." And I said, "Yeah, all right, what's going on?" And he said, you're paying fair value for all your properties. You're paying fair value to all your contractors. You're selling all your properties and whatnot, all at fair value. But there's one thing that's just driving me crazy trying to figure out." And I said, "What's this?" And he goes, you have one of the highest profit margins out of every company that I deal with. What are you doing differently?" And at that point, I realized, you know what? Am I really doing? I guess I am doing something differently, um, and that started the philosophy for what we teach now.
It's always, that unseen wisdom that somebody points out, and you're like, "Oh, that really?" And when you pay attention to that, that's where your gold is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, tell me what you're passionate about right now. I can hear passion in your voice about entrepreneurship, about everything you're up to in your company, but give me some inside information about you. What are you really passionate about?
Inside information about me with regards to professionally, I mean, if you get me started about my kids, that's the other thing.
That's fine. You can include that. I want a picture of you and what you're really, really passionate about.
Well, all right, if you want a picture of me and who I'm all about and whatnot. So, you know, uh, I, um, I'm passionate about living life to the fullest and inspiring as many people as I can. And I really just start with my kids. And I've got three beautiful kids ranging from a year and a half to 7. My oldest is a boy and two younger girls, and both of my kids, my older kids, now my 5-year-old daughter and my 7-year-old son, are entrepreneurs themselves. And to give you an idea of how intensely committed I am to my craft, my goals, my whatnot, I named my son Branson. I named my son after my entrepreneurial role model, which is Richard Branson.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, my son has got it he's convinced himself that he's going to be a billionaire one day.
That's awesome.
And so he makes decisions. He works on his business nearly every single day. He's got a desk in my office so that he can work on his quote unquote business. He's got his own business cards, the whole deal. My daughter, same thing. My daughter's got her own pencils. She's got her own business cards, and when my kids, they fight like all normal kids fight, right?
Yes.
Except when my kids fight, there's something a little bit different about the context of their argument in that the last time I had to break up a fight, it was over which island they were going to buy. So, and they have these. I told my kids that if they really really want something in life, if they want anything at all, they can have it all. Sometimes they just need to ask for a little bit of help, but it's intent that they're really clear about what they want and they focus on it daily.
Yes.
So, my kids literally have pictures of private planes and islands and stuff like that. All stuff that you would never imagine a 5 and a 7-year-old dreaming about, but this is what they love. And so a lot of what I do, I wrote my book, The Predictable Profits Playbook, and I wrote my book because knowing that my kids have got this bug, I have this fear that one day maybe I get hit by a bus or something, and I never had the opportunity to share everything that I've learned with my kids. And so I wrote the book as sort of that first step to be able to share with my kids that formula that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly, I have a monthly newsletter, and I'm writing and I'm creating different products because I feel like if I don't put this out there to create something tangible that I can be able to hand over to my kids, then I'm really going to be pissed if I meet up with those pearly gates and I didn't get everything I could out of it,
Yeah. And we'll be sure and put that book in the show notes so people can click over there and check it out. I can't wait to read it.
Sure. Yeah. And then, so the rest about me, I'm a CrossFitter. I'm one of those cult members that do CrossFit, happy card carrying member, I live on the ocean. I just love the seacoast living. And, my wife is just a beautiful woman who, has the hardest job out of all of us. She has made the decision that she was going to raise leaders. And so she's a full-time mom raising my leaders, my kids. And she's been a co-founder of a couple of my businesses in the past. And she's gearing up to start another one as the kids are going off to school. So that's sort of my life in a nutshell.
Life is good.
Life is fantastic.
What's your vision for the next 5 years?
I think, and I shouldn't say I think because I have all this written down, but it's really doing everything that I'm doing now. And Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach talks about 10xing everything. So making everything 10 times bigger. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it is. Taking my life where it is now and making it 10 times bigger. Mm-hmm. Influencing 10 times more people, mm-hmm. having a net worth of 10 times larger than it is now, being able to take 10 times more vacations than I take right now, which, let me tell you something, 10 times more vacations might sound like a lot, but when you take like 4 days off, every year, it maybe not be that huge, but you have an idea. I mean, that's the vision. I want to just 10x my life. And I want to do it. I want. You might think this is crazy. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it.
Okay.
People always ask me what's kind of the vision of success that you want, and traveling with Tony Robbins, I saw this all the time when people were so impacted, their lives were so transformed by the work that Tony had with them that they literally came to him with tears in their eyes saying, my life is so much greater. It's so much more enriched, so much what because of the impact that you've had on me.
Mm.
And I looked at that and I said, you know what? I would love my life. I would love to make that type of change. I would love to make that type of impact. To have people come to me and say, oh my God, like they have tears in their eyes saying, you have made such a huge difference in my life. Yeah, you know, from where I was to where I am today, I don't know how much to thank you. And I mean that at that point I'll realize, wow, I mean, I did make a difference. I mean, I think everybody wants to know that they make a difference. I'd love to know that really just hit somebody right on the inside, right in the heart.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing to be able to make somebody, you know, uh, multiples of millions of dollars. It's one thing to grow somebody's companies by, you know, 35 to 100%. It's one thing to do that, but it's fulfilling when you know that you've changed somebody's life, when you've impacted them in a way that has created a monumental shift.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to see.
Love it. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Um, the best business advice that I ever received was about 20 years ago. I was stuck in a rut. I wanted to create this business, and that's all. That's the only information that I had. I want to create a business, and I had finished the one that I had done prior, and I went to meet with this gentleman. Um, who was just a very accomplished entrepreneur, and he says to me, Charlie, it doesn't matter. You're so focused on the idea. The idea isn't what matters. You could turn around and you could sell paper clips as long as you have the best paper clips and create the paper clip that people want most and know how to bring that paper clip to market and show people um, that you can do it in a unique and more beneficial way, then you'll create a multi-million-dollar business in no time. And I look at entrepreneurs today that are so focused on, they want to create the best widget, they want to have the best service, and they want to create all this stuff as being the best. And it's true. You really want to have the best that you can do, but just by having the best isn't going to be enough. The best idea, the best widget, whatever, it's really not enough because there are literally and very literally millions and millions and millions of ideas that were far better than the ones that made people millionaires and billionaires that never made it to market. Because even though you have the best idea, you have to be able to form a way that tells people, number one, that you have to find a way to make that product, that service aware to people. And so you have to be able to market yourself so that people know that you can exist. But you have to be able to also do it in a way that differentiates yourself as something different, that differentiates yourself as having a product or service that makes you that obvious choice. You have to not just feature benefits. Nobody cares you have a 6 million pixel camera. You got to be able to tell people how that benefits their life and articulate it in such a way that it makes people want it.
Yes.
And that's a totally different way that I feel like a lot of people and a lot of things are done. And you always hear people saying things like, "You find whatever it is, pick one thing, and be really good at it." And a lot of times, and I see this. This is probably the biggest challenge that I see with. I'm going to say 90% or more of the entrepreneurs that I work with. When they come to me, they have one or two major sources of income. It's word of mouth, and it could be a magazine ad, it could be the internet, organic listing or pay-per-click or whatever it might be, but they have one or two sources of income. And we look at that almost as a spoke in the wheel. And, if you only have two spokes to your wheel, if you think of a bicycle wheel with all the different spokes they have, if you only have two spokes, if one of them breaks, you're going to have a very bumpy ride.
Yes. So
we look at businesses and we say, you know what we need to do, and it's back to what we talked about earlier in the call, that whole idea of optimization and systemization and innovation. What we want to do is let's find ways and we can add more spokes to the wheel. Let's add other strategies. Let's build other ways in which you can get more leads, in which you get more traffic, you can get your buyers spending more money with you. You can get more referrals. You can do all this stuff. So now before you know it, you've got all these spokes to your wheel, so you have a more robust, a more reliable, a more predictable form of profits.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I'm over here counting my spokes. I forgot I was interviewing for a minute. I was doing a little business planning on the side here.
Well, here's the cool thing, about that, the optimization, the systematization, the innovation is, so you always start, so you take one of your spokes, whatever it might be, and you want to optimize it as much as possible. So you want to make sure that you build the metrics in, because, here's a funny thing, and, I don't know if this is where you want to go in this interview or whatnot, but I just find like there's a lot of value to be shared here. Here's the thing. A lot of entrepreneurs, they think that they know what's working, but they actually, they don't know. They think that maybe the billboard they have on the side of the highway, or the ad that they're running on Facebook or whatever it is working, but they actually they don't have the tracking measures in place to say, you know what, this is how much this magazine ad is making me. This is how much this billboard is making me. This is how much, because there are ways in which you can do it through direct response marketing. So you track everything. Mm-hmm. And you cut the stuff off that isn't working. Mm-hmm. You maximize your investment on the stuff that is working, and you also want to optimize it. So last week we sent out just a small piece. We sent out 15,000 pieces of mail last week, but we broke it up into two. 7,500 pieces saying one thing, 7,500 pieces saying another, and we test against it to find the highest performing piece. And so that's optimizing. So once you have something that that works, and you have something that without a shadow of a doubt, this effort is bringing in this much money, then what you can do is you can systematize it. And now things become a lot more automatic. So when things become a lot more automatic, at that point, all you have to do is look at your flight dashboard, if you want to call it that, and just make sure that your numbers are all aligned. And then you can turn around and you can build something else, and you can build something else, and you can build something else. And then, so that's the whole process of systematizing your business. And then the innovative part is when you say, you know what, we've got something that's turned around. For every dollar that we're spending, we're making 6 in return. Let's see if we can make that 605, 610, 620. Let's do something different. Yes. So you start to break it a little bit, just to innovate, create something a little bit new. So you start the cycle all over again. You test it against your control piece to see if you can get more. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. And the reason why it's a lot of work is because you're going to hear a lot of people in that 6-figure range trying to find ways in which they don't have to work as much, trying to find ways in which, they can pull that 4-hour work week, so to speak. That's what they're doing, versus the 7-figure, the 8-figure type companies. What they're looking at is, what can we do to systematize this?
Yes.
They're not looking at what can I do to not work as hard. Now, granted, that's part of what we're doing, but because we want to live a life, right? That's part of being an entrepreneur, is you want to have that freedom to do what it is that you want, but you want to build this business that's more of an empire, and it's built on solid grounds of strategies lined up and supported by other strategies. So you have a constant flow of leads, a constant flow of sales. And, I heard an interview with, now I can't find it. I don't know where it is. I wish I could find it. But it was with Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos,
Yeah.
or the CEO of Zappos, and somebody asked him some sort of question about, aren't you afraid that somebody might take your business plan and try to copy it? And he said, you know what? No, not at all. Because even if we were to hand our business plan over to somebody else, it would take them about 10 years to get where we're at today. By the time they get to where we're at today, we're going to be 10 years in front of them, because we're always creating new systems. We're always creating new strategies to become a more robust company. And see, one thing that's different about today's environment that changed over the past many, many, many years is, many years ago, your competition was within an arm's reach. It was within driving distance to where your office was. Today, your competition is in a global reach, but it even goes more than that. It's more than just a global field. Now you have alternatives that exist that have never existed before. So if you take the dry cleaning business, dry cleaners, I mean, they only maybe had 3 or 4 competitors back in the day. And then dry cleaners got more competition when companies started to offer delivery. And now they could go beyond just within immediate driving distance. Now they could go counties. Their competition were counties away, because the drivers would come into their zone and start taking business away. And then the internet came around and technologies, and now you can do dry cleaning at your own home if you want. Mm-hmm. And so that you have entrepreneurs that are sitting at their desk right now, that they're sitting at conference tables with teams around them, trying to strategize ways in which they can take your customers and your prospects away from you. Now, while that sounds scary on the bigger scheme of things, I think the most promising thing to know is that while on one level they're trying to find ways to get your customers and your prospects, 98% of them have no idea how to do this from a strategic standpoint. Mm-hmm. And so that's where your advantage is, by thinking more strategically and building these systems and building multiple spokes to your wheel.
Strategy and systems.
Strategy and systems. Absolutely. Yeah, it's really important. How many times have you been in a situation where you've said, all right, here's the deal. When somebody buys from me, or when somebody comes into my funnel, I need to remember to do such and such. And then you just kind of forget, and that never gets done. Or I need to make sure to follow up with somebody, or I need to make sure to do this or that. It just doesn't get done, because there's only so much time you have in a day, and there's so many different moving parts.
Yeah. Okay, so, I want to talk about your personal growth for a minute.
Let's do it.
What kind of personal growth have you experienced as a result of this incredible journey that you've been on of growing businesses?
Oh, well, I mentioned to you earlier that I spent some time traveling with Tony Robbins. In fact, between my wife and I, we spent $250,000. We paid Tony $250,000 to travel with him and study him and all the different people that he's learned from. And I think one of the most important personally transformational things that have happened in my life is it comes in twofold. I went to Tony, and Tony says to me, so tell me, who's Charlie? And I immediately dumped on him all these problems that I was having in my life. And I'm like, Tony, fix me. Here's all these problems. And Tony says to me, like, you've already shared with me that Richard Branson was one of your professional role models. I said, yeah, that's true. He says, so let me ask you a question. If you were to have a conversation with Richard Branson, and you told him about your problems, would Richard Branson say that those are big problems, or would he say that those are little problems? And I kind of chuckled and I said, he'd say those are little problems. He said, do you think Richard Branson, I mean, would just love to have your problems? I mean, one day just have your problems. And I started laughing and I'm like, yeah, you know what? He probably would. And he goes, see, that's the thing you have to understand. Big people have big problems.
Yes, beautiful.
Little people have little problems. If
Yes.
you want to play a big game, have big problems. And he
I
said,
like that.
look at Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, she wanted to bring peace and feed all these poor people and whatnot and transform in an entire country, if not the entire world. And so he said, that's a big problem. Would you agree? Mother Teresa had a big problem, and I said, it really is. And she needed millions of dollars to support her, and she needed all this stuff. And he said, she actively created a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a big problem in your life, it's because you haven't created it. And until you create a big problem, you can't be playing in a big game.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
so that was the first piece that was really transformational for me. Excuse me. The second piece was, and I think Tony knew exactly what the answer was going to be, which is why he asked it. He goes, hypothetically, let's play this little game for a second. He said, let's say that you're sitting in your car and you're driving through a four-way intersection. You have the green light. You're driving through a four-way intersection. And then out of nowhere, this guy busts through a red light and boom, slams right into you, totals your car. And maybe you got hurt, maybe you didn't. Who knows? That the point is, what happens from there? And I said, well, clearly it's his fault. I said, right. He said, it's his fault, but do you own any responsibility for that? And I said, what are you talking about? Why should I own any responsibility? The guy freaking ran through a red light. He slammed into me. And now, I'm calling him a couple choice words, this guy's an a-hole, he's the one who slammed at me. He ran through a red light, yada, yada. Tony says, do you see what you're doing? I said, no. He goes, you're taking your power away from yourself. You're making yourself less
Mm-hmm.
powerful by
Mm-hmm.
not assuming that responsibility of being in the car and you giving all your responsibility to somebody else. And I said, well, all right, talk to me about that. What do you mean? And he said, do you mean to tell me that when you get in your car, you don't think there's any possibility whatsoever, there's 0%, 0% that when you're in your car that you would ever drive through an intersection and there's a 0% chance that some guy could bust through a red light and slam into you? Do you honestly believe there was zero chance? And I go, no. I mean, there obviously is some percentage, albeit a low percentage, but some percentage. And he goes, right. You have to assume responsibility that that for getting in the car, own the fact that you accepted the risk that it might happen, then it happened. So don't give his power away. Understand, yes, what he did was broke the law. That's it. He broke the law. You can have your attorneys and the insurance companies resolve it as necessary, but that's it. He broke the law. He hit your car. You were at a green light. That's it. You assumed responsibility and it happened. Own the fact that you assumed that responsibility and it happened.
Mm-hmm.
We see the same thing with entrepreneurs all the time. Call me crazy, but I actually love it when there's a bad economy. Because
Yeah.
when there's a bad economy, it's really the time to be at your most strategic.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of entrepreneurs during that time are sitting there cowering in the corner, sucking their thumbs, saying, oh my God, I can't wait for the economy to turn around. The economy is so bad. It's the economy's fault that this is happening. It's the economy's this and that. Hopefully the president puts something in order. It's the president's bad policies. It's the Federal Reserve's bad policies. It's this and that. And they're blaming everybody else. But when you start a business, you own the fact that there is a possibility that the economy might tank.
You think?
And so knowing that the economy might tank, and if it does, what is it that you can do to handle that situation in a very unemotional but more logical way. And the beautiful thing is while your competitors are sitting there and sucking their thumbs and wondering what the heck is going on, you can think more strategically, because when they're not thinking strategically, it makes the playing field more open. You can actually, it's so much easier for you to win the hearts of your customers when they're not spending the time and the efforts to do it.
Exactly.
It's so much easier to win more prospects. It's so much easier to dominate a market when they're not doing it.
They're busy complaining.
Absolutely. So, that part's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So there's something always to look forward to, And a good
There
market,
is.
why not?
It's
A good
all
market, everybody's
perspective.
happy. All boats float, with the tide. But in a bad market, there's something to be excited about too, because there's
Yeah,
tons more opportunity.
exactly. All right, looking back, if you were to do this all over again, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, if I was to do it all over again, um, I would really focus um, on working smart,
Yeah,
and
I
uh,
love that.
and really just on that whole idea that, uh, as Peter Drucker talks about, he said, marketing and innovation um, are the only things that grow business, and everything else is an expense.
Mm,
And I wouldn't have waited so long to become an expert at marketing. And marketing really is, the definition has expanded far. It's anything that gets and keeps customers.
yeah,
And
awesome.
uh, and that's what I would have done.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Patty, this was a fun call. I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk.
I am too. I appreciate it. Are you an entrepreneur who would like to reach more people, make a bigger impact, and make more money? You need to check out Unleash the Live event, where we will show you how to move from a one-on-one coaching consulting model into a one-to-many model using the online biz formula. I'm bringing in experts from around the country who are going to show you how you can put together sales funnels that convert, create a program and a product that you can sell over and over again, and we are going to have a ton of fun doing it. Join us in November for Unleash the Live event in San Diego, California. Just head on over to unleashedlive.com and sign up today.